Hi everybody, my name is Lewis Thompson and I am a senior editor at National Geographic Learning. I'm joined today by one of the authors of Standout, Rob Jenkins. Rob recently retired from his roles as ESL professor and faculty development coordinator at the Santa Ana College of Continuing Education after almost 25 years. Is this week 2 of retirement, Rob?
Yeah, it's the second week.
Well, you may have retired, but we'll do our best to keep you busy.
Yes, thanks.
So, during our session today, we're going to explore a specific skill set that we can help students to develop so that they can become successful in any area of employment. Let me show you how we're going to do that. I'm going to start by looking at what we mean by employability skills from an overarching perspective. Then we're going to get into more detail about one set of employability skills. After that, I'm going to hand things over to Rob, who's going to share with you some practical ways in which you can start helping your students to develop these skills or share this information with your colleagues. Let's get started. Now, skills are traditionally split into two categories: hard skills and soft skills. Hard skills include the specific knowledge and abilities required for success in a job. Soft skills, on the other hand, are characterized by your relationships with other people and how you approach life and work. So let's take a look at a few examples. Language proficiency. This is a hard skill. It can be taught and measured. Flexibility, on the other hand, is an interpersonal ability, so it's a soft skill. The same with time management. And finally, computer programming, another skill that can be taught and assessed, making it a hard skill. Let's take a look at this in context. If I were to ask the question, what are the most important skills for an English language instructor to be able to do their job successfully, we might get responses that look like this. And if we break them out into hard skills and soft skills, we might end up with something like this. Now, I'm not going to make an assertion that soft skills are more important than hard skills. These skills are imperative for an English language instructor, and they are most definitely needed to do the job successfully. But what this shows is that soft skills are also considered to be vital for an English language teaching instructor to be able to do their job successfully. Now, you might be wondering how all of this is relevant to our students. Well, the English language teaching profession isn't the only industry to view soft skills this way. In a 2015 survey by the Wall Street Journal, 92% of nearly 900 executives said that soft skills are just as important as technical skills. But the most revealing data from this survey was that 89% of these executives expressed that they have difficulty finding employees who possess soft skills. Now, this is just one survey. There are many more with similar findings. So the conclusion we can draw from information like this is that there are clearly employment opportunities for our students if they have the soft skills to meet the demand where there is short supply. So how do we help our students develop these skills? I'm going to hand things over to Rob, who can tell you.
Thanks so much, Lewis. I really appreciate that explanation of soft skills and hard skills. Soft skills are so important in the workplace today. And you will see, for example, the National Education Association states that America's system of education was built for an economy and society that no longer exists. We are a different world today than we were 100 years ago. It used to be that reading, writing, and arithmetic, those 3 R's, were the most important skill set that the workers could have in an agrarian and a manufacturing society. But things have changed. And as you can see from this quote, the National Education Association is suggesting that we need to have our students be more communicators, creators, critical thinkers, and collaborators. They are working to develop these skills because our students may be preparing for a job that doesn't even exist yet. Those type of jobs are really important to be able to prepare for. And how do we do that? One of the ways that we can prepare our students is to focus on these standards. The standards have been around for a long time. Since 1992, we had SCANS, the Secretary's Commission on Achieving Necessary Skills. They incorporated a lot of soft skills and employability skills. The commission was asked and interviewed many employers to find out what they thought was important for our students to be able to be successful in the workplace, or not just our students, anybody to be successful in the workplace. And they came up with these standards. What I think is interesting is when SCANS came out, a lot of people just focused, especially in adult education and in ESL, focused on the workplace unit. And SCANS is much more than that, because soft skills can be applied to any place in our curriculum, across the curriculum. And so when I was very happy when I saw that Equip for the Future came out in 2000, because in 2000, they began to talk about how to be a better family member and how to be a better citizen. But all of these, and a better worker, but all of these work together. You might see that these soft skills apply to lots of places in our lives, but the standards were very similar. SCANS and EFF were very similar. Then came the 21st century skills. 21st century skills were important, and people latched on because of the internet, and they said, hey, it's all technology now. Everything is about technology. So they grasped the part about technology that 21st century skills talked about. But the Partnership for 21st Century Skills came out and said, you know, yes, technology is very important, but don't forget those 4 C's. And they put out a statement. The 4 C's being communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creative thinking. These soft skills, these employability skills will help our students to prepare and to develop quicker and faster. You know, college and career readiness standards came out in 2013, and English language proficiency standards in 2016. And yes, those are very important. Those are academic skills. Those are opportunities. But what you will see is that after we talk a little bit today, you will see that all of these other skills are incorporated in the college and career readiness standards. Finally, the employability skills framework has come out, and that has another set of standards. What we need to look at, because it can be overwhelming, all these standards can be overwhelming. How do we teach all of these in our classroom? One of the ways that we can do that is by looking to see what they have in common. So if we look at this chart of SCANS, EFF, 21st century skills, and employability skills, we might see some reoccurring themes that will help us to be able to teach these things in the classroom. EFF looks small, but these are the 4 general categories, and they have a lot of specific information beyond these. So what do they have in common? Well, one of the things we can talk about right away is communication, which was that first C that we saw from the National Education Association. This communication is included in basic skills. So SCANS says basic skills, reading, writing, listening, and speaking, but to the end of communication. The employers want to see their employees being able to communicate and have that relationship they need to have to make sure that their instructions are understood and being followed, to make sure that if they have ideas, they can generate those ideas and they can share those ideas. That's why communication is so important. But what do we mean by communication, and what is real communication? Here's an example from Standout. I know that most of you are familiar with dialogues. In this activity, the students are looking at a community planner or a community agencies and services, and they are looking for phone numbers, and they're applying those into and substituting those into our dialogue. So important, good practice, wonderful practice. A lot of us do this in our classroom very often, but what's important is that we don't stop here. Dialogues are great. They're very helpful, to help the students get used to using the language, to get a flow for the language, the pronunciation, the grammar, the vocabulary. But it is not an end, because if we stop here, the students won't be able to communicate in real life beyond this particular dialogue, or a little bit beyond this particular dialogue. So in Standout, we go much further than that, and you should in your classroom too. We should never stop at a dialogue. We need to get to real communication, which means the students are improvising. They're working together to achieve something. They're speaking to one another. And in this case, this is a group activity where they are creating a phone list of important phone numbers. It can be as simple as that, but we don't stop at the dialogue. We need the students to be able to personalize the language, use it in their own way with their own ideas, and sharing those own ideas instead of relying on what we say as teachers. So in the classroom, we need to make sure we have real communication. Next, we have critical thinking. And you can see that in SCANS and EFF, we didn't call it critical thinking, but if you go deeper, you'll see that decision-making and thinking skills, as you look at those standards, include evaluating, include analyzing and synthesizing and solving problems. All of this is critical thinking. I kind of get amazed sometimes at people's definitions of critical thinking. When I ask people what they think of critical thinking, many of them start quoting Bloom's taxonomy, which is great, or Webb's depth of knowledge, which is also wonderful. But there's a lot to that. And if I'm in the classroom, I want to make sure my students are engaged. They need to be engaged in critical thinking. And I don't want to have to memorize a bunch of verbs to try to figure that out. I need something simple and basic. So Stacy Johnson, my co-author, and I came up with a guiding principle, not really a definition, but a guiding principle of what makes critical thinking in the classroom, so that we can be sure that we incorporate it. Because we've learned that when you incorporate critical thinking into the classroom, the students are more engaged, they learn more, their attention is taken from the language itself and put into the context. So they've gotten all this practice, but they're applying it and they're using it. So this is our guiding principle. Think deeper than the superficial vocabulary and meaning. Task where students think deeper than the superficial vocabulary and meaning. It's very basic, but think about it for a minute. If I have, for example, I'm talking about produce in the classroom, and I show them an apple, that's superficial. I show them an orange, I show them a grape or a carrot or something like that, or a potato. What can I do with that? How can I help them to think about it more? Well, one way I could do it is to have them classify these things into the food groups, or if it's produce, into vegetables and fruits. And as they do this, they're adding deeper meaning. They're thinking more about that vocabulary word, and it's becoming part of a context that is important for them. They're more engaged. At a higher level, I might ask them, well, what's your favorite fruit? And they'll tell me, and I'll say, well, why is that your favorite fruit? What do you think about it? Or we might have them classify in sweet and sour and all those things. At a higher level, we might have them do inferences. So if they see a paragraph, they can read what's there in the paragraph, and we can ask them specific questions about that paragraph. That would be superficial. But if we ask them about what the author's intent is, or a question that really isn't answered by the paragraph, but is suggested by the paragraph, so they have to make inferences. These are the kind of things that help them think critically. You'll see that in the new CASAS tests, as they come out, they'll have a lot more inferences, a lot more opportunities for students to think. If we are working with them now to help them to do that, they will be prepared to do well on those tests. So that's why that's important. How does it look? Well, here is an example from Standout from book 2. The students have been studying employment evaluations, and there's several soft skills, and and hard skills in these evaluations. And we're asking them a very difficult question. And maybe there's no right answer, which is great. Students can't be wrong. But we ask them, what do you think is most important among all of these? And everybody has an opinion. What's great is you put them into groups, you have them work together and have to come to a consensus, and they rank these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1 being the most important, 6 being the least important. And although I'm sure they think that all of them are important, and they are, but what is most important to an employer? So they're thinking of themselves as employers, and they're trying to figure out what is most important. Critical thinking, consensus, critical thinking, ranking, critical thinking. When they have to come to consensus, they have to negotiate. They have to stand up for their ideas. They have to analyze, going deeper than the superficial meaning. So deeper than comes to work on time. I know what that means. But is it important? Why is it important? How is it important? It is more important than follows instructions, for example. These are just a couple of examples of what you could do with critical thinking. Here's some more. In Standout, we use all of these, but there's even more that we use in Standout. But you want them collaborating. You want them defining concepts. We need critical thinking in our instruction in every lesson. And if we don't have it, the students won't be engaged. They need to be thinking. They need to be processing. This is not about filling the brain with information. Yes, it's great to have vocabulary, and you can have vocabulary lists. They can memorize all those, but they're not necessarily going to remember a lot of that stuff unless they are actually functionally using that language. And as they try to negotiate and work through these things, they'll be more successful. Reaching consensus, ranking, predicting outcomes, all of these things are very, very important. So we should stress and strive to be able to do those. As we move forward, we have collaboration. So we've talked about communication, and we've talked about critical thinking. What is collaboration? Well, it's developing interpersonal skills. That's why we have collaboration in SCANS and EFF and in employability. In fact, the only place that says collaboration is 21st century skills, but all of these, how do we develop that interpersonal skill? We develop it through collaboration as the students work together. In the workplace, they have to work together. They're going to be getting, now in this modern workplace, they'll be working with a team often. They'll be negotiating and coming up with ideas. They'll be creating, but collaboration is important. And that means that they are working together for a single purpose to come to some sort of conclusion or solve a problem. So that's what collaboration is. In your books, in your materials, in your classroom, you want to be able to incorporate that. You can have some sharing going on in group work, great, important, wonderful to help the students prepare, but that's not true collaboration. Here's an example from Standout where the students in a group just share with each other their homes. How many bedrooms does it have? Is it large or small? They're going to be asking these types of questions, and the students will respond and tell them about their home. That's not collaboration, not real collaboration. It's guided, but it gives them an opportunity to be able to prepare for more. Again, scaffolding. Again, English language proficiency standards stress that we need to prepare our students for these activities. We just don't throw them at them. We prepare them. How do we do this? We have activities that simulate this, that are guided, so that we can give them an opportunity to do this on their own. This is a unit about, or a lesson. This particular lesson is about classified ads and interpreting classified ads. So they'll see classified ads in the lesson. They may have a dialogue. They may be building vocabulary. And at the end of the lesson, they're asked to actually create a classified ad in a group. Now, this is true collaboration. This is real, because now they're talking about, well, how much should the rent be? And they'll be talking about what their rent is and what the rent in their area is and what a nice place would be or a cheaper place. They may have to do some research and look up things on their cell phones. All of this is important as they produce and they practice and they come up with this idea. This is real collaboration. We want real collaboration in the classroom as often as we can and that means every day. So really all these 4 C's we need to have every day. We need to have communication. We need to have critical thinking and collaboration every day in the class. And we haven't mentioned creativity, but you can see creativity in all of these activities and beyond. And so I want to show you an activity that is really great that we produced called team projects. Project-based learning is now the buzzword. Everybody's talking about project-based learning as something that is super important in the classroom because the students are developing these soft skills. Here's an example. At the end of every unit, and this happens to be the housing unit, at the end of every unit, our students are asked to do a simulation where they take, now there's 5 lessons in a unit, so they have learned for 5 different lessons. They have learned and prepared for this simulation, and they take all that they've learned and they apply it to this particular simulation, and they work in groups and they develop a project. And as they do, they go through a process that is up to them. They become the owners of this activity. They have worksheets that we give them to help them to support them. These worksheets are things that they will fill out and use as props for their presentation they do at the end. The worksheets are all in online. There's 2,400 worksheets for all of Standout, meaning there's worksheets for every lesson. But for the team project, this is great because they have something to hold up, but sometimes they don't even use those because they develop their own, because they get so involved in this. What's great about these projects is that they're involved in communication, no doubt, critical thinking, collaboration, and creativity. All of these are together. And these 4 C's, when you incorporate them well into your class, and this is a perfect example in a project, you put them all together and you get what I call the 5th C. Now, the 5th C, I think, is more important than all the other ones because it is a marker of what makes a successful student. So a successful student will gain confidence. You know that as students gain confidence, that they will take more risks. They will take leadership roles. They will be willing to do things that they haven't done before. And in the process, they will learn the language faster, better. They'll be more engaged. And that's what these projects do, along with all the other things that we've talked about. It gives them confidence. Students here share leadership responsibilities throughout this project. Again, it's 1 or 2 days, and they accomplish a great deal. You can display their projects on the walls. You can do all sorts of things with them. I bring in people from other teachers in my site. I have students from other classes coming in to hear each presentation from each group. We have 25 students in the class, so we have about 5 groups, and there's 5 other classes, and so they come in for each presentation. A different class will come in, and they learn a lot, and the students get that opportunity to share what they're learning, which is really wonderful. Here's a couple of examples. In Standout, we have projects at the end of every lesson. Again, there's 5 at the end of every unit. There's 8 units in every book. There are 6 books. So you have all of these projects. You'll notice in the 7th unit, that's our workplace unit. Start a company, get a new job, make your own company, create employee handbook, solve company problem, set up a business office. Those are great, but you'll notice that it's across the curriculum. You don't have to isolate employability skills to just the employment unit. You want to be incorporating these skills throughout your curriculum. So you can see create a purchase plan. That could be workplace. You could see that. Design a clothing store, real estate brochure, plan a menu for a week. Well, this one, maybe that's not so much workplace, but at the same time, they're using the skills they would do in the workplace. And maybe they're a nutritionist, so maybe this would be something that you can do. But these are all ideas that the students will produce in your class as you do these team projects. Again, I want to stress those 4 C's, which are communication, critical thinking, collaboration, and creativity, leading to competence. Here are a couple examples. This is from book 4. The students have been learning budgets and how to produce a budget and some of the, how to be a smart consumer. And so as they develop this project, they have developed some interesting ideas that are shared with the class. Here's another one. I do this in January. This is from book 4. Now, the last few years, I haven't had my students doing it on big poster boards. Instead, they've been doing PowerPoints. So you can incorporate this. There's research that can go on, all sorts of things in these projects. Here's a great example of doing goals. This unit, the first unit in book 4, is on goals and overcoming obstacles and learning about time management and all of that. So the group worked on that together. So that is an example of some of the projects you can do. I hope that you've learned a little bit about how to implement soft skills into your classroom. And I'm going to turn the time back over to my friend, Lewis.
Thanks, Rob. So I just want to recap on what we looked at during this session. Before I do, I think it's great that our attendees have been able to see how some of the projects come to fruition. I think we sit through a lot of presentations where we learn about these things, but we never see what they actually look like. So it's really great that we have some examples to share that. So during our session, we looked at the difference between 2 sets of employability skills, those being hard skills and soft skills. We also examined the importance and application of one of those skill sets and how relevant they are given the short supply across the workforce. And we looked at some ways that we can help students to start to develop these skills by focusing on each of the 4 C's and how team projects incorporates all of them. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch our session. And all of the examples you've seen today have been taken from the current edition of Standout. And we hope that you've been able to see the importance and relevance of soft skills for the workplace and how the development of these skills can really help our students to become successful in any area of employment. Like Rob said, for the longest time, and I think this included publishers at one point, it was believed that you could only teach the skills for the workplace in a work-specific unit. But what I hope you're able to take away from our session today is that regardless of the unit, we can teach students the skills that they need across the entire workforce. And as we know, given the current times, the workforce is changing. And we need to prepare our students for jobs that maybe don't exist yet and how current jobs are evolving. So thank you very much for joining us today. We hope you found our session useful. And we look forward to seeing you again in person sometime.